And it's not going to be the fiber that our dietitians all want us to have. She will talk to us about the characteristics of various um,
Yeah.
fibers that are used in crafts and in the textile industry, um, and talking about their different properties and the challenges of making sure that what we do with those fibers is sustainable. Um, Hope she can tell me why my polyester pills in the dryer. I've known Cathy since her student days at Wells. She's always been very, very active. She was a reunion ambassador, so if you've been to reunion, she took very good care of you. She's also been very active in the Fargo board when she was still in those days. She's graduated out of that and has done some things for the WCA as well. Last I knew, Kathy, you were still on the committee for the award.
I stepped off a little bit
You
ago,
stepped,
but I did do
okay.
the award committee for a couple years. Yeah.
Okay. And she has knit some beautiful things. I've seen them. They're just wonderful. And I understand she also likes to do some counted cross stitch and
Mhm.
belongs to a group known as the Nerdy Knotters. So, Kathy, whenever you are ready, we're
Okay.
eager to find out these things.
Okay, thank you. So my idea for this talk came from partly a Fiber Guild group of Wells alumni who share their crafting progress, interests, anything like that. And it's called the Fiber Guild. And as a student at Wells, I regularly attended Science Colloquium, where we had a regular guest speaker uh, come to talk about their research topics or career trajectory or something like that. And so I wanted to do a combination of those Fiber Guild for Science Colloquium. Please go slides you went before. Thank you. Yeah, so Fran went over my crafting CV, which I decided to present first since this is a fun talk. So I have up here a few knitting projects. That's what I've been doing a lot of recently, but on and off throughout my life, I've done some cross stitch here and there as well. And I am glad Fran also acknowledged the Nerdy Knotters Club. It meets at our neighborhood library, and for a knitting group that meets at the library, we can get pretty loud. But I've been grateful to find that group recently, so introduced to more crafts through that and more crafting friends. So my professional CV often is part of an introductory talk as well. At Wells, um, I studied chemistry and have a minor in math. Yeah, Fran mentioned being super involved. I was the community court chair, whirligigs, and served as the collegiate trustee shortly after graduation. Uh, During my time, one of the summers, I completed a summer research experience that happened to be about polymers. And I said, that's cool. How can I keep studying these? And I will explain what they are in just a moment. But after our Wells, I went to UMass Amherst and pursued a PhD in Polymer Science and Engineering. And I went into that program thinking science policy, that's an interesting area. And so many of my classmates were asked, do you want to go to academia or industry? And I'm like, I want to do a different one. Um, so after grad school, I took a postdoc fellowship at the Naval Research Lab, thinking it would bring me to the DC area and I could get into um, science policy through that and networking and being around where the density of opportunities is highest. So when that experience ended, I landed at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Sorry, I didn't spell out that, but that's what USPTO is as an examiner. And so that was evaluating if uh, a certain invention was new and non-obvious compared to all the other publicly disclosed inventions. And my position there was in miscellaneous articles and stock materials. It was a fiber and textile group, um, a lot more industrial maybe than crafts, but I'll be able to pull a story or two from the patent office. In my current position at the National Science Foundation, I'm an associate program director in chemical engineering. And so my role there is to run our peer review process and make award or decline recommendations on the grant proposals. Um, so mostly these are going to academic principal investigators for them to support training their students through research and developing new knowledge, uncovering something or understanding something better that we didn't understand before. And the peer review is very important. I don't know everything about all topics of chemical engineering, so we get to invite experts who do have a much closer expertise and experience in the topics we're asking them to evaluate. So we take that feedback from the community, and that's one of the main considerations we make in our recommendation. I am going to say just a little bit more about the National Science Foundation because I am getting a credit as doing outreach is part of my job. Normally, I'm presenting to uh, chemistry or chemical engineering faculty about some opportunities that they can apply, maybe a new topic we'd like to highlight. So, or coaching them on their next grant proposal submission. I haven't done a lot of general public outreach, but I will share a few facts about the agency that the general public might be interested in. We were established in 1950 by an act of Congress, so we're a government agency. Our mission is to promote the progress of science, advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and secure the national defense. So we do this through two major criteria right now, the intellectual merit. So all our projects have to discuss what new knowledge they aim to develop, and then also the broader impacts, which is how it will benefit society. These can be done through education and outreach projects that complement the research. Since I'm in engineering, many of the projects do describe the problem they're trying to solve or what the eventual societal benefit will be from understanding this work. So a very small amount of your tax dollars are helping us do that. And the amount of those tax dollars we get, our agency budget is set by Congress. So the past 2 years, we've operated at a budget of just over 9 billion. The current fiscal year is just under, but 93% of our budget goes out in the form of some kind of award to support research, education, and related activities in all topics of science and engineering. So in a given year, we have about 1,900 organizations supported by NSF. Most of them are universities, but we have some small business and entrepreneurs supported from our agency as well. And so that translates to over 3,500 researchers, students, teachers, science and engineers of all types are supported by our work. So many of the materials that I'm going to talk about that go into some of the fibers and textiles that we use for crafting or garments have this polymer structure. So a polymer, you can go back to your Greek and think about poly meaning many. It's because a polymer is made of many small repeat units. So in this graphic, the green ovals, we would consider them a monomer, so one, singular. And through a chemical reaction of some sort, they are linked together into a long chain-like molecule. You might hear the term macromolecule as well. So you can think of it as the monomers are like links in a chain. So they'll have very similar structure to each other generally, and uh, yeah, assemble many of them together to make a polymer. We are going to be looking at some chemical structures, and I know that might be unfamiliar to some people. One of the main things we talk about when we're looking at the structure of a molecule are functional groups. So that's going to be a group of atoms that are going to give a specific property or character to that molecule based on their arrangement. And I'm going to show several. We'll get introduced to a few of them throughout the talk. I liked this diagram. It kind of looked like they were on name tags, so friendly introduction to them. If you were an organic chemistry student, you would be looking at these often and seeing them in your coursework and problems and reading you had to do, and then you would get to memorize the names of these and many more. I don't expect you to do that. When we see some of these functional groups, I'm going to highlight them with a color. We'll talk about what types of character they might bring to the polymer or fiber they're in. And so there won't be a quiz at the end, but maybe if you hear some of these terms in a scientific report, they won't be so scary. If you see one of these organic chemistry molecules in a news report somewhere, it won't be so scary. No. Um, I'm gonna be introducing just a few of the materials that go into some of the fiber and projects we work on. I'm choosing acrylic yarn to start with because that's what I started knitting with. It's cheap, it's available. Um, and so, but one of the interesting things about the acrylonitrile monomer or polyacrylonitrile polymer structure is this carbon and nitrogen next to each other act a bit like a magnet. It has one side has a more negative charge than the other. One side has a more positive charge. So I use this small magnet diagram to show how the acrylonitrile polymers next to each other might interact. And so these magnets, when they align, are going to help hold the changes together. So that helps this material form very stable fibers. It's resistant to heat and light. So that's another advantage that this stability has. And it is the main component of acrylic yarns, and it's also present in modacrylic, but in a lesser extent. Um, so I don't want to judge anybody's choices about what they choose for their projects. There's going to be kind of pros and cons to everything throughout the different materials we're seeing here. So there's one functional group we've been introduced to. That's the acrylonitrile, and it can act a little bit like a magnet. Another popular material is nylon, and so this will go into quite a lot of different types of clothing applications, but also ropes and cords. Um, there, it can even be used as your toothbrush bristles, I think are often nylon. Uh, and so nylon is formed from two different monomers. One of them is always going to have this acid group, and one of them is always going to have this amine group. When they react together, it's called an amide. So you might also hear polyamide used for nylon, as well as for other materials. So that describes kind of the main linkage in the polymer chain. Um, but polyamide is a general term because you can have different pieces in between each of your amide bonds. And so that's where the number 6,6 comes in here. Each of these monomers has 6 carbons. And so in between the amide bond, you have a chain of 6 carbons. Organic chemists, because carbon and hydrogen just show up so often, we want to have some shorthand and not write them out every time. And so if you see this zigzag chain, each corner is a carbon atom. Um, and so if you had a different number of carbon atoms between your amide bonds, you would have kind of a different form of nylon. But 6,6 is the most common variation here. And I didn't get to put the last couple pictures I had wanted. If you're doing some crafts with paracord, that's almost all nylon. I think if you have maybe like a windbreaker style jacket, some of those might be nylon. Well, I have a sock in progress knitting, and so nylon gets added into sock yarn often, again, to make it a little bit more stronger, a little tougher. So yeah, remember about these amide bonds. They're pretty strong. They're going to show up again later in the presentation. And I think in the introduction, we said we could take questions as we go. Um, yeah,
Okay, I have a question.
sure.
What
Annette?
what is motocrylic?
Um, it's another, I don't know if it's used as often, but it would be that polyacrylonitrile I showed you blended with other components. So it would be kind of a mixture.
So are you saying it's other fibers or other it's another fiber or some other fiber or fibers that are combined with it?
I Yeah, I think so. Oh, Rhea asked about rayon. That's going to come up later. So yeah, I don't have a precise definition of motocrylic at the top of my head, but yeah, it's a blend of a couple different things.
So are a lot of the synthetics some form of an organic molecule?
Yes, and I think that can be a confusing term because organic chemistry means it is mostly based on carbon and hydrogen bonds. Um,
Yes, I took organic chemistry and I live with a soil scientist, so
okay, great.
I'm aware.
Okay, I'm assuming not everyone is aware. Um, so yeah, organic chemistry has quite a different definition from organic food.
Oh, yes.
um, so yeah, okay. I think that's all I wanted to say about nylon. Okay, so I am going to talk about just a couple examples of natural fibers as well. One of the uh, largest, uh, most common one you'll find is cotton. So you can see the cotton fibers growing on the plants here. And looking into the molecular structure, uh, has the single unit monomer at the bottom here. And then they get linked together through an oxygen. You can see the monomer is called beta glucose. It is very similar to a sugar. Fran mentioned the fiber in your diet. Potentially, this is, I don't know exactly, but it's not good for our diet. We can't digest it. That's partly why fiber helps to move things through. But cellulose is present in quite a lot of different plant structures, and some other animals can digest it, but we can't. So we use it for fibers instead. I want to highlight these little OH groups here. That's the alcohol functional group we're getting introduced to. And again, they are capable of forming what's called a hydrogen bond. So it's kind of similar to the magnet. Hydrogen does these bonds a lot, so it gets its own special name. But the hydrogen on one glucose unit can kind of interact. Again, it's based on a slightly positive hydrogen and a slightly negative oxygen, so that it's again slightly like a magnet that'll help hold these chains together. Because cotton has all of these OH groups on it, they kind of look like water, H2O. That makes cotton a very hydrophilic material. It means it likes to interact with water. It can hold on to it, soak it up, absorb it. Okay, cool. Annette says cattle can digest cotton. Cool. I knew it was certain types of cellulose. I didn't know if the source mattered, but thank you. So cellulose is present in many different plants. It can be sourced from many different types of fibers. So cotton is one specific and prolific example. These are the types of lists I would look at the patent office often. So you can see the legal phrasing to the start of this list. Several different plants, some that I recognize, some that I still don't. And I would see these lists of different cellulose sources often. And I slightly bumped my slide ahead too quickly because this is from a patent. And the title of the invention is Flushable Wipe and Method of Forming the Same. So I think we have like a baby wipe. And so this is the type of thing I would get often at the patent office in the fiber and textile group. And I thought there were like bigger and better problems I could be solving with my time, is one of the reasons I left the patent office. But I screenshot down whenever there's a patent issued, the examiner is listed on it. And I was like, yeah, I remember Jen Gillette. She was in my group. So yeah, I got to see a lot of other things at the patent office as well, but sometimes when it was baby wipes or toilet paper, I don't know. This is not exciting to me. I hope it's exciting to someone. Jen is still working there. Hopefully she's still enjoying it. So here is Rhea's question about rayon. It takes quite a process. Because cellulose has the hydrogen bonds in between chains, its structure also allows it to be very crystalline. It makes it very difficult to process from a solution or a melt. We have to stick to, you know, the cotton gin is a very more mechanical process to start the fiber formation. And so if we want to use a process that is more liquid based, you can move things through your process better that way. We have to do some work to get cellulose into liquid form. And so this is the rayon process. Um, I'm just going to highlight a few of the chemical steps. And again, you don't have to remember it precisely, but we'll look at some of the changes that happen throughout. So we're starting with the same cellulose structure with that OH at the end. They're using caustic soda, so this is a very strong base chemical. And that will turn this into a salt. That'll make it easier in the next step to add these sulfur groups. And so that will really, they're much weaker hydrogen bonds. That'll allow the cellulose to kind of break up and dissolve. And so now you've got it dissolved in a liquid. You can run it from one tank to another. And so that's what the two sulfur groups here is called a xanthate. So that's where this xanthination process name comes from. But if you want to get it back to a fiber once you've moved it over or get it ready to spin, you have to go back to cellulose. So using a very strong acid this time, opposite of a base. Now we're back to the beginning cellulose structure. So at the beginning of the process and at the end, you have the same chemicals. You have the same atoms connected to each other. But you have broken down some of that crystallinity. And so rayon fabric maybe is a little less tougher. It feels a little lighter. But it was that processing challenge because cellulose is so hard to melt or dissolve. That's why we needed the rayon process to make the cellulose easier to work with. And you can see that this is from a wood source. And so wood pulp allows you to get the cellulose from a variety of different sources. And so the rayon process is just one example. I am not going to go through all the different examples, but if you see some of these names, modal, tensile, there's a couple others I recognized. I don't recognize all of them. Yeah, viscose, I think, yeah, it's the same, is similar to rayon. Lyocell, that's the other one I recognized. That's here. So they won't necessarily be the exact same steps. They may, like some of these won't use sulfur, but they're all a series of steps to be able to break the cellulose crystals apart so you can dissolve it and work with it as a liquid. And again, it lets you use a wider variety of source materials rather than just the cotton plant. Okay, so I called the rayon semi-synthetic because you have a natural source, you have the same chemical structure in the end, but you did do a lot of chemical industrial type processing in between to get there. So now we're back to another natural source, and these are going to be protein-based. So proteins are a very specific class of natural polymers. Nature uses amino acids to build these polymers. And so they have the acid group and the amide group. And so it makes the same amide bond we saw in nylon. Chemists use R as kind of a shorthand for a variable. And so in nature, there are 20 different R groups on amino acids. And what cells can do that chemists are not very good at yet is to arrange these 20 different amino acid monomers in very specific orders. And so that's the machinery behind getting a lot of different biological variation. Maybe you'll have one form of a protein versus another because you've arranged the amino acids in a slightly different sequence or swapped out one for another. But usually our biology is very good at following the template and making a very specific sequence. So my a small example here with the shapes, maybe I have 4 different types of amino acids, and then I can repeat the same sequence over again. So you'll see very specific sequences in protein structures. So I'm not going to discuss the whole structure of a wool protein. It is a type of keratin, so similar to our hair as well. And one of the characteristics in this protein is that it has a lot of the amino acid cysteine, which has this thiol group. So sulfur and hydrogen on the end of it. And when you have 2 cysteines near each other, they can make this disulfide bond. So 2 sulfurs together. And in the wool protein, these disulfide bonds between the cysteine amino acids help to stabilize the protein into a spiral structure. So you can imagine the chain of amino acids connected together gets kind of wound up like a slinky. There are also some hydrogen bonding happening. And so all of these kind of work together to keep this spiral structure. So that is the very smallest scale. We're looking at the molecules of the wool protein. As they get bundled together in larger and larger structures to make the fiber, this part is getting to biology. This is going to be a little bit beyond my usual expertise. So we looked at this helical coil. That's just the protein here. And I was fighting with the pictures earlier. I found an in color version that didn't have a length scale. So I had to go get the measurements off of a black and white boring version. And so this length scale is in nanometers. Hopefully you're familiar with a meter, 3 feet or so. My hands went off the screen. If you divide that by 100, you get a centimeter. So I'm going to say that that's maybe a little less than the width of my pinky or so, about a centimeter. If you divide that by 10, you get a millimeter. So I'm going to say, if you, the smallest distance you can kind of hold your fingers apart, or maybe like a medium or larger sized embroidery needle, kind of feels like about a millimeter. And so you take that millimeter and divide it by 1,000 again, and then you're down to 1 nanometer. And so that's about the size of the coil. Again, these structures are built up and bundled together to get the whole kind of wool fiber. So that gets us back up to about 20,000 nanometers, so that's going to be 20 millimeters. So we're back to the like 1/5 of my pinky nail. So a very coarse hair structure. And so we're able to use some advanced microscopy to see these structures in the cross section of the wool, but also to see the outer surface. And so it has a very rough texture. You can kind of see these lines and grooves. And so they're actually sticking out from the surface, maybe like a scale a little bit. And so these rough edges and these scales lead to the wool fibers felting together. So I think you can imagine these little jags, almost like a Velcro. And so they're kind of, if these fibers get a little too close together, they're going to get latched on and stick closer together. And so that can lead to shrinkage in some of your wool garments. You can see there's a little space between these fibers here and in this second part of the diagram. There's not, but I think also it can contribute to, Fran asked about pilling. Sorry, I didn't get it on polyester, but I got it on wool, that those entanglements cause the fibers to stick close together and form into little balls rather than the nice elongated fibers that you hoped for out of your sweater. One other component of wool is that, at least these are sheep wool. I didn't get to other animals. Is that it has lanolin on it as well. And so this is the chemical structure, quite a long hydrocarbon chain here. Remember, we don't want to draw it out every time. But because it's carbons and hydrogens, that means it's very water repellent or hydrophobic. And so lanolin also gets called wool oil or wool grease, oil and grease. You use it to repel water or keep water out. So that's what helps wool stay dry. Okay,
Kathy,
so
there is a process that removes that cuticle from the wool to
okay.
make it less likely to pill and felt. It's often referred to as a superwash wool
Okay,
then. A lot of sock yarns are
yeah,
that, but it involves subjecting the yarn to some kind of a chemical process. So
okay,
is it natural? Is it not?
sure,
We can
sure.
debate that.
Right. Been treated probably is what I would call that. Um, okay, yeah, I didn't happen to get a chance to come across that process. Um, So, like I said, we got to meet just a few of these chemical functional groups. So, if you hear amide, you'll know those are pretty strong bonds. They're present in proteins and in a lot of nylon or polyamide fibers. The thiol is the sulfur and hydrogen here. They form those disulfide bonds, so that can stabilize a protein structure or an interaction between two proteins. Another spot where you've probably heard this is if you're a baker. As you're kneading the bread, you're encouraging these disulfide bonds to happen in between the strands of gluten to make sure your bread is elastic. So that's another spot where you've probably heard of cysteine or this thiol group. Um, Polyacrylonitrile was the very first example I discussed. And so the bonds between this carbon and nitrogen give it a little bit of a magnetic character. Similarly with the alcohol, and that acts through hydrogen bonding. But again, it's that the oxygen's a bit negative, the hydrogen's a bit positive, so they can interact like magnets in between the two different ones. And we saw if it's an alkane or a hydrocarbon, doesn't have any additional atoms, nitrogen or oxygen, just carbons and hydrogen, that's going to be a very hydrophobic character. It's going to repel water. I don't remember what time I started. Okay. um, so I have just a few comments. There are many challenges in the textile industry. There are places where you're using a lot of different chemical treatments, or you're using chemicals to synthesize your fiber materials. Um, all those treatments create a lot of waste. This can be solid waste, this can be water waste, this can be your strong acid and base solutions in the rayon processing, for example. And of course, accomplishing these processes use a lot of water energy resources. So I did find one example where for some of the natural polymers, they're having some success using it again or transforming it through biological processes. So if you're using a compost at home, again, if you have natural polymers, probably ones that are less treated. I didn't look into denim. They're calling it out separately. So you can compost that and use it as a biofertilizer. It's not quite the recycling vision we have because we're not going back to the original material. Similarly, you can use textile waste in an anaerobic digestion. So again, this is bacteria-based, but without oxygen. The enzyme depolymerization is pretty interesting because some of the products you get, we're going back to some of the monomers. So glucose is the monomer for cotton and cellulose. The amino acids are those basic units of proteins. I didn't get to polyester, but you need two monomers to make that, and those are terephthalic acid and ethylene glycol. So this enzymatic depolymerization process is also called chemical recycling. And so you can use those monomers to make fresh material. This is a pretty interesting route. It gets around a challenge of your material degrading or breaking down during the recycling process. So that's a common challenge, especially in synthetic polymers. You can melt your plastic material and reform it, but the grade of plastic is going to change a little bit. It may not be as strong, it may not be as hard in that second round. So it's possibly still useful, but maybe not as for as high a value product. But these chemical methods of recycling get you back to your starting material. You can make your next round of your plastic or material to the same quality as you would. And yeah, a couple others. Fermentation gets you down mostly to small molecule products. Again, you can use them for something else, but maybe you're not always back to the same starting material. So those are a few of the limited successes. Um, some of the many challenges that face plastic and textile recycling is that I talked about the base polymer materials that are used here, but I didn't talk about any additional dyes or additives or other types of molecules that are used in the products. And so separating those out is very challenging. Um, I mentioned, you know, some types of blended materials, like the sock yarn has some nylon in it to strengthen it. Well, how do you get you can put a wool sweater and a nylon raincoat in separate piles, but that sock yarn, you can't easily put them in separate groups or take them through separate processes. Um, so, there's a lot of room for improvement in the garment life cycle. So thinking about the end of life as you are designing your material at the beginning. Um, and so uh, changing your inputs in the process there. Another place to improve is to switching to sustainable energy sources to power your processes. Um, Removing hazardous materials. Again, those are maybe in some of the additives I've talked about, things that would uh, make the garments less flammable, for example, are not great for the environment, but it is great to have less flammable clothes. Yeah, there are many challenges, many factors to consider, which is why it's a long-standing problem. Um, okay, so I am going to give the chemistry a rest. You made it. Hopefully, it'll be a little less scary the next time you see some chemistry. Um, a couple, there is one volunteer opportunity if there are other crafters in the audience. It's called Loose Ends. And so it helps match crafters with a somebody who is in need of help finishing a project because their family member or loved one passed away or is ill and can no longer um, complete their craft. And so I've gotten two projects from that organization. One was this cross stitch. The original crafter had finished about half the cross stitches in the um, little moon of flowers, crescent of flowers here. Um, so I was able to finish it and return it to the original crafter. And another project gave me most of the body of the sweater was done up until I marked the spot here where I switched over and I started knitting. So I had to finish the shoulders and the sleeves and assemble it all back together. Um, and then I was able to return it to the family. So you get to try a project you maybe wouldn't have always picked for yourself. I had to relearn French knots for the cross stitch one. I hadn't done those in a while. Um, but yeah, it's a really interesting way to volunteer. I think they are set up initially around fiber crafts. I think they did mention though that they were going to sign up some people for woodworking. Um, so I am going to pause here and check time and question. You're muted, Fran.
There we are. Thanks, Kathy. We have a few more minutes that we could do some questions, but I also want to do a plug. We Wellsians also have a group known as the Stagecoach Vibers Guild. We are strictly on a Facebook group where we post we post pictures of projects and do our bring and brag and help each other out. but we also once a month get together for something called Sip and Whip. It's on the fourth Wednesday of each month, where we get together and just sort of have an old-fashioned do your fibercraft bee and catch up on the gossip. Um, Oh, some of the projects that the Stagecoach Fibers Guild has been doing is when students were still on campus, we would send finished objects like hats and scarves and mittens and blankets and things to our connection with Tiffany at the library, and students who needed them came and got them. We've been doing that over on the Hobart campus still. We have a connection where a couple times a year I do send boxes of stuff to our student, and that way we can, um, you know, keep in touch with the Wellesians who are, finishing their degrees elsewhere, or at least at Hobart. And so check on Facebook for the Stagecoach Fibers Guild. But we'll bring you on, and we'd love to see you come to Sip and Whip. So, um, okay, let's see. Kathy, I wondered, I've lost my question, but I think it did have something to do with the issues of waterproofing or sizing or some of the other chemicals that are
Yeah.
added to a fabric because its natural state is somehow not good enough.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I did get a couple fabric sizing uh patents to examine. Um, and again, it's ways to coat or attach not precisely lanolin, but something else with those long carbon chains that would give a hydrophobic and waterproofing character. So that was something that would come across more textile type stuff.
mhm.
Um, if you're talking Scotchgard type things,
That's one. Yeah.
yeah. I don't remember if that's a fluorinated one or not, but that is a possibility. I'm sure you've heard about the challenges of PFAS, the perfluoride. I will get the acronym wrong because it's just become its own word. Perfluoro,
The
fluoro
forever
and
chemicals.
polyfluorinated octanoic acid. Uh, that's one of them. But this bond between carbon and fluorine is also another very hydrophobic character. And so that's why it gets used in nonstick coatings. The Gore-Tex, that one is a fluorinated polymer. Uh, so that's why it's used in rain and weather gear. Um,
I have a
sorry, what
question.
was sorry, I didn't know if got back to Brian's question.
It's fine. I
That's
just wanted to know if you had any thoughts about some of them. It's complicated because we all sort of say, oh, we want to get away from something that's synthetic and go natural, but then the
Mhm,
process may not of getting that natural fabric may not be so natural, or there may be something added to that
mhm,
natural fabric that makes
yeah.
it desirable to us, but
Mhm,
isn't quite so natural.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the other recycling type challenge is do you have to how do you deal with those additives? Do they help or hurt your recycling process? Do you need to separate them out? Yeah, they each create more challenges.
I have a
Uh,
question.
uh,
Marty?
Question.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I live in Greenville, South Carolina,
okay.
which bragged at one point that it was the textile capital of the world. There were 19 plus mills here,
Wow.
and they left quite an imprint, to say the least. The mills are still here physically. They've been converted into condos and whatnot. But I have a more practical question in terms of recycling rags. I'm talking about clothes
Mhm.
that my husband and I have worn and we have worn out, no longer worthy of goodwill or whatever. What about recycling them as textiles? Do you know anything about that, Cathy?
Mhm. Um, I'm trying to remember the source, so I might not
Okay,
get there,
I'd
but
make another comment.
okay.
The flushable wipes crew,
Yeah.
the inventors, they were all from South Carolina. Anderson, Easley, they're all suburbs of Greenville, just as an FYI. So there are still people interested in the textile piece here. Um, I want to do something that's responsible
Mhm.
with these rags that aren't even worth, you know, rags, sheets, towels, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So I was trying to come up with an organization. I don't know that they would be able to, you know, respin them into fibers, usable clothes. But what can happen sometimes is that they might get chopped up and used for like insulation or filling or something like that. So they can have another use. It's not as high a quality or not as valuable a product. But I think look into some of the organizations behind the like clothing and shoes collection bin. I don't know if you have seen those around your community.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them might be doing them for insulation or something like
The houses in Aurora that was had some renovations done, oh, I want to say about 20 years ago or
that.
so.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was the Lion House, um, the big yellow one on the lakeside. They used a kind of insulation to improve the R factor for that house that was made from recycled blue jeans.
Mm. Some municipal authority, some municipal, I guess some places they're called transfer stations, other places have other names. Some of those places will accept non-reusable clothing and they do some kind of recycling with it. So it's worth checking with your local Department of Public Works or whatever you have that's the equivalent.
Marty, I use all of our leftover tablecloths, sheets, even large towels as weed barrier. You put it under mulch and cotton towels, for example, or tablecloths or wool or whatever, linens, they'll eventually just deteriorate into nothing, but they keep weeds down. And Fran has a friend who takes old wool articles like sweaters and felts them, makes them into little bags, little pocketbook or
Tote
tote
bags,
bags and
things
things.
like that.
So
Another
there's a
good
lot of
place,
uses.
sorry, another good place to bring stuff that is not too torn up um, is animal shelters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They always need bedding. So if you have an old towel with holes in it, but it still could be folded into a comfortable place for an animal to sleep. So I often take stuff like that, or I even collect it from friends and bring it to local animal shelters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the
A
thing
neat
you'd have
idea.
to be careful about is rags that were used for cleaning because they may be, completely soaked
Sure.
with various kinds of cleaning
I'm talking more
chemicals.
about
Yeah.
clothing and
Yeah.
linens that can't be no nobody else will want to wear them or use them.
Hmm.
Not rags, not cleaning rags.
And drop cloths, that's the other use. We never throw anything away at our house.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming.
thanks, Kathy. I
Very
mean,
interesting.
it is still a difficult, it's choice when you start thinking about it,
Mhm.
about picking up a particular piece.
Yeah.
Yes, it's polyester. Yes, it's carbon based, possibly even petroleum based. And yeah. But then you pick up the cotton piece and you realize cotton just, takes away so much water from the planet just to grow it and to make it and to process it into that t-shirt.
Mm.
Which is the more responsible thing to do? It's not always easy to know.
Yeah, yeah, it's a complicated set of factors. I do have some colleagues at NSF, their specialty is life cycle analysis. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, they are trying to account for all the different factors, the energy inputs and outputs. And yeah, that's not my field, but some people are trying.
It'll be nice if someday somebody is able to develop an impact on the planet scale.
Hmm, sure.
And like from 1 to 100 and
Yeah.
assign everything a number so that
Yeah.
you can sort of compare apples and oranges and know, just how what
Yeah.
the footprint is going to be.
And so I didn't want to present these choices as one was better than another. It's for your project or your need
Hmm.
is going to be a consideration as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. And different groups that I
Mhm.
know that we knit for have different requirements about that. Some only want machine washable acrylics,
Mhm.
because they're going to be used in hospitals
Mhm.
and that kind of, and they will go through lots and lots of washing. Um,
Mhm.
Other projects, like there was one for soldiers, where a particular helmet liner,
Hmm.
for soldiers in Afghanistan, and it could not be synthetic because if they came in contact with an IED and there was an explosion,
Melt.
it melts, right, and it causes much more skin damage
Mm.
than wool, which would burn and self-extinguish.
Yeah. Yeah. Any knitting I do for friends with little kids has to be washable.
Right.
So Kathy,
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for your
Mhm.
presentation. I actually majored in organic chemistry at Wells.
Oh, great. Oh,
Yeah, and after I graduated, I got into computer science instead of pursuing that. But it was just fascinating to hear somebody who did pursue that as a career. I mean, I was memorizing all the names of those molecules, a lot of
mhm.
memorization. It was fun. But also, I'm really into fiber. I knit and weave, and so it was fascinating to hear those two subjects come together. And you did a great job of.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
With
I had many
yeah.
more ideas than I had
Oh, I'm
time.
sure
So yeah.
it's the tip of the iceberg, but you did a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
job not overwhelming us, I think. So
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Angie, we'd love to see you on the at the
Yeah.
Stagecoach Fibers Guild at Sip and Whip. The next one
Sip
is
and
on,
whip,
yeah,
WHIP.
works in progress.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought, what do you?
Yeah.
What
No.
time of day is that?
7:30, just same as this. And it's the fourth Wednesday of the month. So the next one will be the 22nd, I'm looking at. Yeah. Go and check on, just pull up the Stagecoach Fibers Guild on Facebook, and we will add you to the membership, and you'll get notices about the meetings.
Well, thanks for
Um,
the invitation.
okay, well, I'd like to see you there. Um, Next month, we will close out for the academic year. Um, our May meeting will be I think, believe it's 13th, second Wednesday, and we will have Mo Walt's class of 2021 Mo is completing an internship here in North Carolina through the veterinary school at NC State. Um, their at work after Wells was to go and become a pharmacist. And this internship has to do specifically with veterinary pharmacy. And so they'll be able to tell us lots and lots of stories about the complications of trying to match the right dose and of the right medicine to the right animal. And sometimes the big problem of how to get it down into the
And the
animals. So,
animal.
we've all had to deal with giving a cat a pill, and try giving an elephant a suppository.
I give them a cow, it's antibiotics.
So, we'll be looking forward to having Mo do this
That's fun.
next month.
I'm pet sitting for a friend, and this dog won't take his vitamins.
Oh, no.
Thank you. Thank
Okay, well, thanks everybody,
you.
Thank
and good
you.
night, and we will see you soon. And in the meantime, stay safe and have a nice spring.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Enjoy. Take
coming.
care. Good night.
Thank you.